Hey everybody, this is Brent Ingersoll, and you are listening to the Speaking Of podcast. Today, my guests are Jayme Hall and Phil Appleby. They're the directors, the leaders, the visionaries behind Outflow Ministry here in St. John, New Brunswick. Outflow is an organization that helps the homeless. They have a shelter. They provide 600 meals a week for people who need food. They give jobs to the people who are trying to get back on their feet. They just do incredible work. They've helped so many people in this region. I am so excited to sit down and talk to them. Here's my conversation with Jayme and Phil. Let's go. Here we are. Jayme, Phil, Jayme Hall, Phil Appleby. Thanks for joining me today. For those who don't know Jayme and Phil, these guys have been, how long, let me ask you this, how long have you guys been running Outflow Ministry specifically? Like, you guys are here predominantly in St. John area. How long, when did this get started?
It was the summer of 2008, so it's been almost 12 years. Well,
yeah.
It's a little over 12 now.
Yeah. I feel like, because you guys have been here the whole time I have pretty well. Like, I came here in 2006.
Yeah.
So it feels like we've been tackling the St. John area that whole time. So what's your background? Like, give us the backstory of Jayme Hall, Phil Appleby. You know, you don't have to start this as like, hey, I grew up in a Christian home, and give us the camp testimony. But like, what, you didn't just arrive, investing your whole life and family in this kind of career choice. I mean, this is your whole life where you're running Outflow, Catapult. I mean, a whole bunch of ventures all in that same vein of really just, it's a ministry of grace. I mean, you're just helping people who really need a boost. What is Outflow? Tell me that first. So for people who don't know, I'm sitting here because I have a understanding a little bit of what you guys do, but for people who don't know, what do you guys do? Which is also a nuanced. It's also a nuanced.
Yeah.
What does Outflow do?
Yeah, well, we started with just ministry to, I guess to feed people, have some meals, supper time meal, but it's kind of grown from there. So some of the things that are going on would be our community suppers, which look a little bit different during COVID days. But
I bet.
Then the shelter, the men's shelter that we run, there's a training program and some social enterprises, coffee shop, construction, woodworking shop, things like that. Dental clinic, which isn't quite on the go right now either, but hopefully will be, and some other things, drop-in centers, Bible studies, things like that. And it's really, I mean, our what do we call that? Our motto, our thing, restore dignity, renew life, and realize hope in Jesus is where it's all at. And so that's it. I mean, in the beginning, it was this call to minister to the poor in St. John, and that's
which is it's a pretty, like, for a city of 130,000 people or so, it's a pretty significant population of people who are below the poverty line, chronic addiction, homelessness. You guys are right in the front line of that, and tackling it. I mean, not just in, I mean, one of the things I love about you guys, but it's you don't broadcast you just do your thing and you put your head down and you call people to join you, and you don't sit down and say, hi, I'm Phil, and I've been helping the homeless for 10 years plus now. So, so even hard to, I asked you what Outflow does, and if there's a stranger listening, they're probably like, so what do they do? Like, they're the dentists?
Yeah.
No, you guys like specifically have an organization in the St. John area. Now, you guys were into some other cities at one point too. Are you still doing that, or is it predominantly St. John?
That was an idea.
Yeah.
No, never really took off.
No. So it's just been St. John.
Yeah, we're realizing over the years to stick with these areas that God's called us to. Food and shelter, and now with the social enterprises, and just stay. Build on them and be with the people that in St. John that the Lord has called us to be with, and that's where we're at. I mean, we'll go where he says to go in that sense to say, but right now there's so much on the go with what we have.
Right, especially with COVID, it's kind of flipped everything on its head.
Yeah.
And you still you have the same problems you're dealing with new complexities, which I understand that at some level with the church as well, because it's again, we still have the same mission, we still have the same task, but some of the tools we had to use before, we don't have the same way, and we're having to kind of reinvent how we tackle this. So I can only imagine the complexity of, feeding people, housing people, giving people work, all that. Now, I'm assuming like the CERBs probably, did a lot of the homeless collect the CERB and like basically probably have more income for the last several months than they have.
If they had work, if they were able to.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Right, man. So really, let's go back to your vision statement, like restore dignity, renew life, restore
dignity, renew life, and realize hope.
Realize hope. That's awesome. I love it. And basically, I mean, you guys seem to really run your operation through that lens, because you don't just, and I want to talk to you at length about this, but you guys don't just simply, we're going to give a meal and our job here is done, or we're going to give you a bed and our job here is done. You really do see an individual, and that's what I love about your ministry and you guys, is you see the individual and you kind of try to tackle that. Like this is a whole person, and these problems are more than just they need shelter and a meal, and you really do tackle it from a real Christian gospel perspective, which has probably had its challenges as well, even partnering with other organizations in the city and stuff. You guys have been pretty unapologetically Christian about it.
Yeah. I think that's what for us starting Outflow, the big thing was to say we're not just some social group that wants to do a good deed today. We do love the Lord, and
right.
If you believe that Jesus is in the poor and with the poor, and all the scripture around that, and just the basic principles in the Bible around loving the poor.
Right.
So we didn't want to just do it because it was a good thing to do that day or whatever. And so you're right about the individual. We believe that it's okay that it's just one guy today that you're able to help. We try to go back to that, because it takes the pressure off of getting it all done and making sure you just did everything so perfect, and working in the food programs with volunteers and stuff, and people can get kind of overwhelmed with the fact that, well, I'm not doing enough today. I haven't really done what I should do, but there's people right in front of you that that's your.
How do you guys manage that? 'Cause like it's such an infinite job, really. Like, because I think you really are embracing the call and the heart of Christ to deal with the whole person, and not like, even we think about salvation in the gospel. It's not just a transaction. It's not just like Jesus died for my sins so I can go to heaven someday. Like, I don't think any of us believe that. We think he actually wants to transform our lives and like make us a whole person. And like, that's such a harder job though, and like frustrating and costly and exhausting, helping people who have really dealt with a lot of dysfunction and drama and trauma in their lives. And like, how do you as individuals, because I can only imagine how exhausting that can be. I'm sure rewarding and fulfilling as well, but how do you manage that kind of constant, like, where do you draw the line where you say like, hey, I've done what I can do today, and you felt like it's a drop in the bucket maybe at sometimes too. Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah. Well, I think we talked about this amongst a few staff last week, and it was to be able to kind of hand off that responsibility to another believer, that you've come to this place for whatever reason you can't go much further.
Yeah.
So that's the body, and when we look at Outflow, we don't look at it like any other way other than it's really wonderful to have brothers and sisters in the Lord that are with you in mission,
Right.
and believe this mission. And just like what you're doing here at the church, I've hit my max on this level.
Yep.
So hopefully somebody can help me here. And I think when you're moving in the direction that Outflow's been moving in for 12 years, we see that, and that's the beauty of the church, of coming alongside
Right.
of those that really need the love of Christ, and handing it off and stepping back and letting other folks get involved.
Raising people up, relationship be huge in that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You guys came here, I don't know, Phil, were you living here? I think you were living in Moncton before this all started, weren't you?
I was.
And so you moved your family here. Phil, were you living in the area at the time?
No, I was on Whitehead Island doing some lobster fishing.
Wow.
And we worked in the church there. We had a youth group there, and brought them over to the Romero house, I think it was. And so we did that. It was during that time that I bumped into Jayme. We hadn't seen each other since Bible school, I guess, back in the day, and kind of got reacquainted. And we just, as we're talking to each other and catching up, we're talking about what's on our heart, what God's called us to do. And I remember my brother standing there and saying, "You guys should get together. You got, that's the exact. You guys are talking the same thing." And so we did. Over the next, I'd been trying to move actually off the island the year before. Really felt a pull to St. John, and it just wasn't working out. And then actually right after we talked, everything just fell into place. And so I took up a construction job and moved over, and I had one child at the time, a wife and my little girl, and then we kind of just started where we were at. I remember those early days saying, what do we do? And our wives saying, are you guys going to do something, basically? And Jayme said, well, let's just start with hitting the streets and getting to know people.
Right.
And from there, it kind of started with just a meal on a Sunday nights, and we've never, I guess, looked back. Well, maybe we have looked back a few times, but
it's been neat too, because in those earlier days, I remember we were sitting down on the beach in the Belial Bay, Phil and Melanie and my wife Donna and we were sitting there, and we were just not doing anything. We were hanging out, just having a good time, and that's when they said, are you guys going to do what you said you'd do?
Really?
And it was this kind of moment where we thought, yeah, well, we did say we'd do something. Well, what would that be? And it was literally just saying, well, we should just grab some food and go into King Square and give it away. And we met a few other couples that same night, the first night that we went out, that stayed with the ministry for quite a few years.
Wow.
And it's neat how, and now God's using them in other things right now. But I mean, I love how the Lord brings the church together. I remember we looked across the King Square and we said, yeah, they're definitely Christians. They're out there, just the way they were, and it's all good. But and bringing people together, and that's really the story of Outflow, really, from the beginning till now.
Yeah,
it's just the church in all of its brokenness and everything coming together to love the people that need.
We also, I think, a big lesson, and Jayme had talked about it many times and lived it, but one of the things I appreciated early on was just starting with what you got and where you are, not waiting for
huge.
A building or something like that. It was just, well, what do we do?
What's in your hand? So use what you got.
Let's go for it. And some of those early encounters, of course, now we still know some of the people that are coming to the meals, but those first times that we're in King Square and we're sitting at a park bench and we're meeting with somebody and having this conversation, it was just beautiful. So I miss those times.
God's really given you guys the ability, though, to be a catalyst, I think, for the church, right? Like, you guys have, I know there's been a ton of people from King's Church that have been involved with you for years, on and off, and you have people from all different types of like denominations and church affiliations, small churches, big churches. It's interesting. You probably have a real unique perspective, probably 10 years into this, coming out. I mean, you were in ministry in the local church before that. I'd love to hear your journey on like your journey on the church, and you I think you're part of a country church now and out in Norton.
Yeah.
Like your journey with the church for
He's stirring it up.
I am.
Stirring
No,
it
no.
up.
Like I mean, you and I have had conversations about this, because I think when we're young and we're full of, can I say piss and vigor on the podcast? Is that going to get bleeped, Ron? I don't know. But when we're young, like we have passion, we have energy, and we're dealing with reality and all that the church should be and could be. And then you look at what's actually happening and get frustrated by it. And like, I know my perspective as I've aged, as I'm closing in on 40, and I've been senior pastor for I don't know 8 years now. Like your perspective matures and changes, where you start to see like, okay, it's not all bad and it's not all good, and these things like are much more complex than just. I think we're idealists when we're young. At some level.
Yeah, we were for sure.
Yeah, I think we all are at some level. And like you and you probably wouldn't be doing what you're doing if part of it wasn't just a reaction to what you weren't experiencing in church ministry. And God's just big enough and able enough to allow you to feel some tension to launch you out into what your calling is. What's your journey with the church been, for better and worse, and in all of this, like how's that all fleshed itself out, and how does Outflow understand its role with the local church?
Yeah.
Loaded question.
Well, so in the beginning, I had left the church went to work with my father's business, and so it was a big shift.
Right.
Went to school, went to ministry. I mean, I was only in the church pastoring for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, but pretty, not angry, but concerned, I guess, would be the question of, why we aren't doing certain things that I felt that were very, pretty obvious as a Christ follower to say, we've heard the sermons, we've preached the sermons, we've been involved with our small groups, we've talked about it a lot. And yet here it is, right in front of us every day. We walk by it, or we
say these things matter to us, but our actions don't say the same thing.
Right. And so, but pretty arrogant though in the beginning.
Sure.
My approach to it was just moving into it without much. I didn't hold much back in my opinions on the church and whatnot. So I knew everything.
We're similar like that though.
It's like. Haven't done much, but I know how to do everything. So and it really was probably into 7-8 years of Outflow when the Lord really touched my heart to the church to say, you need the body, and it's not just about getting this group together on your own over here, or it comes from the people are coming from. Just look. All these churches that our pastors are preaching and teaching, and they're learning, and they're desiring to serve.
Right.
So they're acting on what they've been told they should do, and so it was a wake up call for me to say, this is a beautiful thing to see, and the shift there too of just kind of almost the philosophy of ministry and what we're doing here and how it gets done.
Right.
And who's getting it done. And so.
It's interesting. Like I think the three of us, although we're in different maybe sectors, we're part of the same kingdom, fighting for the same cause, and we have probably similar journeys. Because I think about my own journey, leading King's Church. I feel a real call that God wants us to be a large, healthy, frankly, like powerful church that's impacting a lot of people in a variety of ways. But if I were to rewind 5 years ago, 7 years ago, in my mind, it would be, well, we need to have our own outflow. You know, we need to, and like having, again, like a more idealist sort of understanding of, you know, really kind of narrow-minded, not seeing the capital C church, just thinking like if we need to be everything, you know. And as I've grown and matured, understood the church, not just King's Church's unique lane and role, but in its context of the bigger church, you know, I've shifted in the, you know, actually we're probably making a bigger impact by, you know, blessing the people who have a passion for Outflow to go and contribute, to give, to serve, and not be salty about that because we don't have our own thing, or getting behind Outflow in the ways that we can, or other organizations, right? Like, we don't need our own food bank. There's already food banks doing it. We don't, you know, and like seeing ourselves as a resource that, you know, maybe in some ways I'm not on the front line with my people as much as I'd like to be or feel like I should at times, but, you know, I've shifted in that I think we are serving St. John better by not trying to reinvent the wheel and just giving another option at the same thing when you guys are already doing you know, such an incredible job, and there's other organizations doing other things like Pregnancy Resource Center and stuff. And so, you know, we've seen ourselves more as partners and builders, and that's been a shift.
It is a shift. And when we started Outflow, I remember we went around to local churches in the city, pastors and uptown and whatnot, and talked to people around what we wanted to do. And the general attitude was, we don't need that to happen. You know, we're good here. We have these programs. And so what you're saying is, I think it's a common piece, but the shift of the attitude now of the new way of saying, well, we need each other.
Yeah.
We're better. We are actually better together.
Yeah.
And, you know, your sermons might be better than this guy's sermons, or the music over here might be better than the music over here, or they might do this better than this or worse than this. But at the heart of that is a guy who doesn't preach great sermons but loves Jesus. And the band that sucks, but hey, they're getting up every day and trying to do something for the Lord. And for me, that was just a shift in how everything was.
Yeah.
And we need those guys just like we need King's Church, which is a phenomenal church. And, you know, we need each other. And then it was just supporting and giving and that's, to me, being Christian and helping one another in the call that we've all been given, and pursuing excellence, of course, along the way, because this is the what we should be doing.
Our volunteers come from, I mean, we just have so many that I'm blown away. We have so many from this church, from True Life, from so many churches, Anglican churches. And, we had Rick Tobias from Yonge Street Mission in Toronto. We get to meet with him every so often, and he's kind of a mentor to us. And he said that it was surprising because he said here in Atlantic Canada, he said, what you have there is totally unique. He said, I don't know, you know, he's not for sure, but he said, I don't know if there's another place that has what you have.
Yeah.
He said the amount of churches that support your ministry from different denominations,
Yes.
he said, is totally remarkable. He said, and when I heard it, I was pretty encouraged because I thought, well, I guess I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah. It could be worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
real.
think when I talk to other people, I talk to my father-in-law in Nova Scotia, and I think, you know, he's kind of blown away by what happens here in southern New Brunswick. You know, even Easter services, you know, you guys will partner with other churches sometimes, so you'll have like it's like, or a Good Friday service.
Yeah.
You think, this is quite an area, and you think of what can happen when people who are passionately following Christ get together to serve him in different ways. You know,
I think part of it's like, I mean, it's just necessity, because like there's not that many of us, you know what I mean? Like it's like even a population. We don't have the luxury of saying, you know, Outflow doesn't have the luxury of saying we're only going to partner with Baptists. Yeah. You know, like you're going to die if you're not going to be able to keep the doors open. Like you need every, like Mormons, man, whatever. Like you can't be building up barriers, saying we don't take your money, or we don't take your help, we don't want your, and it's like, it's that in the church though too. I think like
We'll take anybody's money.
Absolutely. I'm sure. But like, I found that in the church. I remember I was at a like a church planting networking like round table for Canada. So it was on the West Coast, and I was there, and it was with a certain denomination, and they were they were trying to figure out a strategy to plant all these new churches across the country. And they were talking about like, well, we need people with Reformed theology, and they have to be Calvinists, and they're like. And I sat there for 2 days, and then I finally spoke up, and I said, like, I can't be part of your network. Like I don't even fit your theology. And I said, if you go east of Montreal, I said, we don't have the luxury of saying like, sorry, your theology is not quite right. I'm going to find somebody else, like, because we just don't have that many people. Yeah. So, and it's forced us to partner. And I think you guys have been a real blessing to, especially the St. John area, in that, like, I think that's the heart of God for where he's moving the church anyway, is that like denominational walls are really eroding. They're really eroding fast. And I think I say do it. And, if we can make Outflow ultimately about like the kingdom coming on earth as it is in heaven, if we can make King's Church ultimately about that, or True Life, or whatever church we're talking about, and we really are open-handed about the label and who gets the win, and it's really about making Jesus the winner in this and making his kingdom the winner, I just think that's what really starts to guide real kingdom momentum, when we stop like holding on to, well, I need this or we need this. It's fear, really, I think, that drives. And I get it, man. It's, I'd like to talk to you in a minute about like living by faith, and because you guys have walked that road for 8 years, but.
And part of the things that we've tried to say over the years, and I know Jayme's talked about it before as well, but we say, because we have so many people from different denominations, and we just always encourage that. And then at the same time saying, make sure you know what you believe, and believe it. And if it differs from me, then that's good. We can talk about it. I remember we had Bible study after one of our meals Wednesday night, and sometimes we would celebrate communion together. And we have a lady that volunteers, and she's just a passionate, awesome Catholic girl, but she was not going to have any of that.
That's tough, yeah.
And she's like, I can't take part in this. And
you're not a real priest.
And it was awesome, actually, because we talked, because I didn't want her to. She was firm in this, and that's where you need to be. And I'm going to be firm in my position, and we can talk that out. Yeah. But still, at the same time, both recognize that that we're following Christ, and we can have these differences on some things, but we can still come together. And there we were. She comes and helps out and serves in her way at our meals, and I thought that was cool.
I think there's a John Wesley saying, like, it's in essentials unity, in non-essentials charity, and in everything, in non-essentials liberty, and everything charity, I think is what it is. And it's like, I think in Atlantic Canada anyway, the church, what is essential is maybe, maybe partnership, and like is a little more essential in Atlantic Canada, just because of the sheer, lack of population base,
What happened with me was when we started actually becoming friends with people.
Isn't that something,
that you didn't plan to want to really like.
Right.
And you thought, wow, this is cool. And especially when you start meeting people that you share complete, differences of lifestyle and opinions, but even like if you meet somebody that's spent their life in prison, there can be a service that we provide for you, that you get this and this and this, but then when you cross over into to a place that the Holy Spirit has brought you together,
right,
and you can't disconnect, that becomes a problem in speaking against the individual or a lot of things around that, because it doesn't matter to me what people say around that as much as what the Lord is doing in that.
Well, and relationships, the only context where we can even start to have those deeper conversations of, like, so one of us at the end of the day is wrong on the communion thing. Either I'm too loose or you're too tight about it.
Yeah.
But until you have a relationship that's strong enough to even navigate those conversations, you can't, and like I found that to be such a blessing in what's shaped me and even our church. Our church is, we're part of a denomination, but it's more of a non-denominational feel. You've got people from every background. You've got charismatics and you've got fundamentalists, and they all think that I preach their version, and I'm really grateful for that, though, and I've only been able to do that through God's brought relationships of people who have spoken into my life that I've gotten to know, and that informs how I understand their theology, and it's such the devil has done a great job of creating divisions, walls in the house of God that God did not put there, and I think it's I think we're in an awesome time right now, though, where those walls really are, they're coming down, and you're going to see churches really start partnering and getting beyond just the, let's do an Easter service together and pretend that we like each other, where there's an actual, hey, you got Outflow are the best at doing this, so I'm throwing everything at Outflow to do this. And True Life, they are doing this well, so let's get behind them. Or maybe someday there's a church that rises up that is so like King's Church, and all the kingdom momentum's on there. Maybe someday God calls me to lead King's Church to be part of that church. I think we're going to see a ton of that in the next 20 years, where it's like just the kingdom, there's a consolidation happening in the kingdom, and like clarifying about what really matters. And some of that kind of junk that we've been carrying, you get all these rooms and all these walls, there's a lot of room for skeletons in the closet and baggage and stuff. Man, we start opening things up and building relationships and tearing down walls and partnering together, man, the kingdom gets way healthier and way more effective really fast. And I think you guys have been a huge catalyst in generating some of that in St. John. You didn't come in here asking permission. You just sort of, you felt called, and God called you here, and he's called people to come around you as well. And that's just such a huge, I just think it's a blessing to the kingdom, not just to the people that you're serving, whether they ever become Christians or not. Like you guys have really met a need in the city of St. John that's brought the church together. And I think that's a huge, huge thing. How have you, I want to talk to you about, like we haven't really, hopefully people are piecing together your story a little bit here, but we're all over the place in the best sense of the word. But how have you guys, one thing I think people would be interested to hear, because I am, how have you learned to kind of live by faith that God's going to provide? Because you both left your jobs, you both moved your families to the area, you've invested yourself in a city where, starting by giving out meals, like, okay, yeah, but how are you not only just paying those bills, how are you paying your bills for your family, all that kind of stuff? Like, how have you learned, to be a nonprofit? You live off of how God provides for you, like just every single day. You've been doing that for 8 years. Like, how have you lived? Which is the way I think we're all delusional if we don't think that God's providing for us.
Yeah.
But you guys have had to really have a tangible, lifestyle of trusting him to provide for that ministry and your families. Like, how have you seen him teach you to live by faith for his provision?
I think it's individual, so we'll probably have different, we could share similar, but I think it might be. For me, it was like how I was raised too. It helps to have parents that teach you these things that matter in life, that God will provide. He takes care of us. And I remember Dad and growing up and the business that he ran, and entrepreneur, the struggles, starting it out and doing what he did, and always taking care of us, working all the time. There's all kinds of stuff around that you're watching. Yeah. and you see that, and you start to surround yourself with a thinking pattern that is, sometimes I wouldn't say high risk or anything, because it's really not. What we do is, it's not. It's just go for it.
An entrepreneurial spirit. You've got that for sure.
Go and do this.
Yeah.
And yeah, you might bomb on it or whatever. It might not work out, but go and do it. But then for us at Outflow, for me, when I look back, it's just like, when you were talking, I was trying to think like of an example, but it's like once you get a taste of the faithfulness of God when you really need it, you're hurting today. You need Him to show up, and whether it's in another 20 meals, or a pretty substantial check to pay for the bills, a building, a vehicle, and we could share like stories of literally the Lord coming with it through His people, us not connecting, talking like this.
They wouldn't have known.
Yeah. Those stories, they're real. They happen, and they're happening in our ministry. We can't explain it. And I go back, to just say, I know I'm messed up as an individual in many ways, but I know that the Lord's, the awe of God, I guess I would say. I can't get away from God because He won't let me, I can't get away from Him. I can't escape the awesome peace of God, that the presence of the Lord is with us. Yeah. And so we can't run. And we've met, it sounds like I'm going somewhere else with that, but when at the end of the day, He continues to show up with, which still, you might be struggling with something, but it still strengthens your belief system in God, and says He's going to do it again tomorrow. Yeah. And He just keeps doing it. Yeah. And that is a fun place to be, and also, not so fun sometimes too.
He's a shepherd, right? He leads us, and he knows how He made us too. So one of the things I appreciate about both you guys and Outflow, for that matter, is you definitely, there's no you aren't just waiting for handouts. Like you work hard, and you maximize every opportunity that you have. Like that entrepreneurial thing, I think it really has a positive effect on how you guys have run Outflow. And you take risks, you create new ventures, and like stuff like Catapult and the coffee house, and giving people dental clinics and all that stuff. Like that's the proactivity piece in it. But yet God knows both of you enough, and I'm similar wired in that He won't let you get so good at it that it's so good at fundraising and generating income and all that where you get into the zone where you're like, I don't need Him. I know how to. I'll go get a $100,000 check right now. He's not. He won't let you get into that space where you start to get some delusional idea like you don't need Him, and then at the same time though, He also won't drag you into a zone where you're constantly about to have a heart attack. Those are amazing experiences where we see the hand of God just show up, with that, just that exact number at the right time. He told somebody else just what I needed, and He just wanted to show up that way to remind you, I got you. Yeah. But that's probably not healthy every single day. I don't want to live there all day, every day. And so there's that zone of, I think God can, He won't let us get into a place where we just are constantly assuming that money's going to fall out of the sky. And yet He also won't let us think that it's by my own hands that I've built this thing. He'll keep you in that zone of trusting Him, but also not being lazy, and being proactive, and using the gifts He's given you, and, networking and building income streams and all that kind of stuff. You guys have just lived that. It's been awesome to watch, and it's been inspiring to see that mixture of hard work and faith.
Yeah, that's the zone to be in. Don't always hit it, but that zone of humility and working hard. Over the years, we've seen, as Jayme said, some of the stories we forget them, and our wives tell us,
Isn't that the weirdest day?
Yeah, it is. They're like, you should write this stuff down so you
Mm-hmm.
don't forget, because we've had the moments where we're not really trusting. You know, we've seen some amazing things, and then having sleepless nights and stressing and worrying about things, and then usually it's our wives saying, you know, you've seen God do amazing things, so what are you worried about? You know, you've seen people walk in and say, I want to pay off your mortgage,
Or they say, just get your crap together.
yeah, just get it together.
He'll provide. Yeah.
We've had people donate buildings. We've had
Yeah.
people walking up the street when you need to provide a meal and you don't have enough, and it comes in, and so we've seen all that. It's just, but like you say, you can't do that every day. Otherwise, we'd just be a
You know,
wreck,
I too, we've said this before, and it's big for how I see God in how he's involved with what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we can see like the 162 Waterloo Street shelter, and we have the training center at 100 Waterloo, and the coffee shop at 116 Princess Street. We have a farm out in Cars.
Yeah.
Every one, the dental clinic, all that stuff that
Yeah.
is involved in getting a clinic set up. We have one face normally, maybe a couple, but there's usually one person that really backs that property from, we'll say, the streets,
Yeah.
from a place of major brokenness or something
Wow.
in their life. We can't say no to it. Now
Mhm.
we'd like to sometimes you'd like to say it doesn't maybe fit with where we're going, but then when we break it down and say, well, wait a second, like the dental clinic, there's so many stories of the dignity piece. So we break
Yeah.
it into our mission, right?
Right.
You know, and so it's massive.
Yeah.
You know, when there's people looking for work and they can't get work right now because of the condition of their mouth or whatever. So we've helped them. We got to the point where there was a young lady that wanted to. She's a dentist, graduating, wanting to do more for people that are
Wow.
living in poverty. Comes to us, could we do this? We're thinking, you know, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's it's fulfilling to other people's call to God too,
Right.
and that's the ministry of Outflow.
Yeah.
And it's worth it.
Yeah.
That it's worth a building, and
For sure.
it sounds crazy to some people
Yeah.
when they put the math together, but then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
it's the next stuff, all the finances, all the people, everything
Yeah.
that you need to get through that year, day, whatever, is on the table. And you're thinking, can you imagine
Yeah.
if we said we wouldn't do this? And
Right.
we go back to, can you imagine if we just said we wouldn't serve hot dogs in King Square? Because
Right.
we do know how, not that what we've done, we do know how many people have come to our meal programs,
Yeah.
and they're running it, you
Mhm.
know, they're and fulfilling the call that the Lord has on their life
Right.
right now.
Yeah.
And that helps me get through any issues I might have
Yeah.
to run a ministry like Outflow.
Yeah, and
because it's worth it.
Right. Well, I was going to ask you that. Like, what for you? Every so often in ministry, I'll get like a, just a nice reminder from God that says, like, it's just a moment where it's like, this is why I do what I do. Like that. Oh yeah, that was that makes it all worth it. Like, what a moment like that. What was the most recent one for you where it's like, oh yeah, this is why I signed up for this? Because they don't happen as often maybe as we like, but God's very good about knowing when we needed that little pat on the back or that breath of fresh air or that reminder that stirs kind of your first love. What's maybe a recent example for you of like, you're just reminded, this is why I do what I do?
Yeah, well, we've had a few, although they don't, like you say, they don't come as often as you'd like. But I think the reminder for me is always one-on-one, and so we have a couple of people that we work with, and we hopefully build into them, but then they build into us, and just seeing where they were, whether it was in prison and just not able to really even function outside in society, and then seeing seeing their heart for the Lord, and then seeing how they've, they're living it every day, waking up, going to work, improving at what they do. And we have a few guys like that in the construction side of things, and then also in the shop, and just seeing what God's doing in their lives. And it's not every day, it's not like phenomenal, it's up and down. And but yeah, that's when I look at that, I think, this is what it's all about. And I think you mentioned that earlier on. I was just thinking about how this is what it's like, because I know that maybe in the beginning, I don't remember exactly how we thought about it, but we've seen it over the years, how people come in and think, okay, if I just say these words and deliver this message, their life's going to be totally transformed in a moment, and everything will be great, and then I can go on and move on. And it not that God couldn't do that, but it just doesn't happen that way normally. And so that's the whole discipleship piece and relationship. And I know Jayme's had talked about that over the years, the relationship piece of Outflow, and it's key. We have to be building into each. This is going to be a daily thing. It's not, and it's not all these little things that we've learned over the years. It's not me coming in to save you and this. It's really just the fact that God's called me to be part of this, and He's hopefully going to use some things that He's going to use me somehow, but He's going to use you to speak to me. And we've seen that. We've always wanted to see those kind of divisions break down. Not that we're turning a blind eye to the actual facts. If somebody's financially, they're not well off, or economically or whatever. We're not saying that, but we do know that in Christ, He breaks down these barriers of rich and poor and all that stuff. But
we have almost, we have guys that we've put on our payroll, on staff that have come through, maybe even stayed at our shelter, so when we talk about stories, it is almost daily that we have.
You're looking at them.
I'm proud. And there's something that they've done that, I'm proud to say that I've done this. Yeah. And I learned so much from, the guys that I'm talking about right now, if they were going to watch this, they would need to know that I'm learning. Every time I get to be around them, I'm learning from them. Yeah. And that goes back to that piece of I'm learning how to even survive. I'm thinking to myself, how are they doing it? Every day based on some of the stuff that they've gone through. They're staying semi-clean. They're doing well. Yeah. And God's going to use them to do even better as they move on in life. And and other stories of guys and men and women that have come out of homelessness and now are living in their own homes and dealing with life, properly, not using drugs and hurting themselves and other people and moving forward in life. And I see the people within our ministry helping them. And maybe not me, but people that are dealing with them on a daily basis. In giving that hope piece, why are you coming back to Outflow next week to see me type of situation, or why are you coming to work tomorrow? It's giving hope, and it is. I was talking to a buddy of mine, my age and at this stage of life, feeling pretty alone right now, and just wondering why. And if I was to be honest with them, it's because you spent your whole life doing it by yourself. Right. And you got nobody now that you can really go to and lean on when you're needing to lean on them the most. And I want our ministry to be like that, whether it's within the staff, our board, our volunteers, the folks that we get to eat supper with, or to know that we're in this journey together. Yeah. And we learn and we give. Yeah.
I was, you guys talk, like, you hear so much in what you're saying about just like it's the ongoing relationship building. The success stories really aren't overnight. It's not a microwave solution. I mean, it's an ongoing labor of love that you're at the table, and it's not even something that you probably notice when it happens. It's more like, oh my goodness, this guy actually really has changed. Like, it's possible. And look, there's a success, and I didn't even really notice while it was happening. It's not until you like come up for air and you're like, wow, yeah, we've actually really made a difference. You know, that must be really challenging, you know, today, especially like think of the day and age we live in now. We live in like, I mean, it's selfie world, it's Instagram, it's everyone, like, people love virtue signaling and not actual virtue. Yeah. You know, like they love the appearance of social justice. I'm a social justice warrior. No, you're posting something on Facebook and you have a cheap passion for it. But you guys, like, how do you guys see, and like, what challenges do you guys see, even like talking about, you know, COVID aside, you know, ministering and doing this type of ministry in 2020, where people love to talk about, you know, social justice and all those things, and there's at least a heart there for it, but at the same time, there's not. It's pretty superficial and cheap a lot of the time, and people at the end of the day want the fast sort of. They'll take the selfie, you know, volunteering at Outflow, and but then they're gone. You know, they're gone the next week. Like, how is that? Has that been a thing you guys have had to deal with at all?
Maybe a little bit. There's
it is annoying, but
I imagine but
you know, it's. I'd like to say I think we've all been there, so.
Yeah.
Sort of, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
So the encouraging thing that we've talked about is seeing some of, a lot of our volunteers that I just am blown away by. A lot of them are, I would say most of our volunteers are all older. And I'm thinking of a number from King's Church, actually, even right now, that just have been doing it for years. Yeah. Some of us from all the way back in 2008, just week in, week out, doing the hard stuff. And I'm impressed. There's nothing glamorous about it, you know, and nothing glamorous about getting told off, or you put all this work into a meal and somebody chews you out because they don't like tomatoes or whatever.
Yeah, and you have to deal with are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, and the gracious response that our volunteers have, and I'm impressed. But yeah, there's nothing glamorous. That's not a one-time thing. This is week in, week out. Yeah, and I think that's really where it's at. You know, there's a couple cases where we've had some phenomenal volunteers over 3 or 4 years where they've come to a place where they've said, "I'm done." Yeah, you know, and they say stuff like this too. These people are just takers. They just take. Yeah, and I'm tired of giving. Like when they say that, I get it from where they're at there, but I also think that it's like you're starting out wrong. You know, like, I really believe that. I know you can get burned out and overwhelmed with anything that you're doing with repetition, and you're just doing it. But there's that other piece of it that says, well, when I give that guy $20, I know I would like him to pay me back that money. Yeah. And there's people probably that would listen to this and say, well, yeah, if he says he's going to, then he better, you know. Yeah. Or I'm never giving him another $20 ever again. We just don't operate that way. Yeah. We never have, and
you can't. Like, there's zero way you can do what you're doing long term if you really are doing it a return that comes like directly from what you're investing. Like, you really have to, at the end of the day, it ultimately has to be that you continue to minister from a place of calling from God. And really that's the bottom line. And whether or not you get the benefit of seeing, you know, those stories that remind you, this is why I do what I do, or you get the return on investment, like, because really you're dealing with people who have had massive dysfunction, you know, in their lives, you know, on them, like, they're takers. Like, that's literally what, like, you know, it's an issue. Like, we're actually trying to deal with the reason there's dysfunction. Like, you know, if there wasn't, they probably wouldn't be in the situation that they're in. Like, it's such a challenge to really deal with the whole person, especially when we're talking about, you know, a lot of the time, you know, do they want help? Do they, you know, like, do they like this really challenging
I've learned
stuff.
too, though, on that level, just so I kind of be careful here, but it's not a high percentage, in my opinion, that would fall in the category of, you know,
right,
selfish kind of taker people. There are so just wonderful people that are struggling.
Yeah,
and
they need help.
And we've with that whole relationship, we've seen us get together over the years, and you connect, and never ask you for anything.
Yeah.
You know, matter of fact, they would like to give.
Yeah.
You know, if they could, they'd give more. And so there's that too, to say, hey. So there's always going to be somebody that throws a rock through your window, or backs up your toilets and floods you out, that curses you off.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean by that, though. Being at the front lines of, you know, of people who are in the, you know, some of the hardest circumstances imaginable in our culture. Like, it just comes with the territory that you've got people, and I'm not saying any of them are necessarily intentionally vindictive. It's just that you're dealing with very complicated, destructive problems and pasts and things, like circumstances that, you know, one of the tragedies too is, I mean, you think of the poverty in St. John, so much of it's generational. Even like they grew up in it, their parents grew up in it, and like, you know, you're dealing with generational cycles you're trying to boost people out of too. So it's, but I mean, if you guys, especially you guys at the point of it all, like if you go into it though saying, I'm not going to feel satisfied or fulfilled, or I'm not going to be able to continue to do this if I don't see an instant, you know, change, it's just not going to happen. Like, you really, at the end of the day, have to resolve, like, you're called to this, and I'm doing this whether, you know, I get one success story or 1,000, right? Which you guys have, I think, fortunately have had a lot of success, which is a great thing.
I remember discussing it with somebody one time, because they said, how do you, you know, what do you do when you don't, you know, week in, week out, you know, you're serving somebody and you just don't see a change. It doesn't look like you ever will. And I think it was you, Jayme, that said, well, you just keep loving them till the end. Like, you're just called to share the love of Christ, and leave it up to him. And I guess there's a certain amount, there's a level of freedom with that, where you don't feel the pressure. I mean, because we had a gentleman come in one time who was volunteering. He wasn't a believer, because he told us he wasn't, but, you know, he thought our goal in Outflow should be to create middle-class citizens. He says, what's your goal here? Are you wanting, you know, they should have a job and a house? And I said, well, no, that's not our goal.
Right.
You know, we want to introduce people to Christ, and whatever that looks like as they're, you know, as they're following him, and you know, as we all are, you know, he's kind of putting us together. But that's not it. But he thought that would be success for us, and we're like, no, that's not success for us.
And we've tried to have a hot meal for somebody, or a shelter bed, or you know, here's some help with your dental work, and that's it, you know. So, and we do that because we're Christians, and that's why and that's it. And so people, oh my goodness, it has to be more. It can be, for sure. We've been holding Bible studies on Wednesday nights when we could, with, you know, 10 people. And we serve 600 suppers a week. It's a lot. If you'd like to stay for a Bible study, then you can. And we'll be there and have some music and look into the Word. But so that does kind of bring us to that crossroads that we had, Phil and I, for Catapult. Like when you know, because we knew
figuring out that next step.
Could there be more? Even for one, like, so it wasn't. Was because you do get to that place that a lot of meals, a lot of stuff that we give away. And that's great. That's compassion. We're not, you know, we want to be doing that. And but then there's that desire to see people work and to
Yeah.
see people that want to, that are eager to move forward that way. And if
Yeah.
we can play a part in that, then
Yeah.
we will.
One of the things I've been thinking about as a leader over the last, this has been something I think God's been working on me in, is this whole idea of being like I don't know if it's the right term, like a self-differentiated leader. And what I mean by that is, like, if you look at Jesus, I mean, he's the prime example, and we're supposed to receive from him and minister and lead from what we receive in him. And he never needed anything from anybody. Like as like, I mean, being the savior and all, but like he didn't need his disciples to react a certain way. You know, every time you see him interacting with them, it's always for their benefit. Even like you look at the Garden of Gethsemane, you think about when he was praying, right? You remember that scene where he's praying with sweating like blood or whatever, and he comes back to Peter and the three, and he's like, hey, couldn't you guys just pray for it? But he said, if you read it, he says, like, pray that you will not fail, you will not fall to the test. Like he actually wants them to pray for their benefit. Like he didn't need them to pray. They needed them to pray. And like you see over and over, he never needed a response a certain way from them. And I find when I'm at my worst, as a leader or as a dad or as a husband, it's when I'm only good at this if you behave a certain way. And it's like, and really what the God's been teaching me is, like, you can't need who you lead. Like I can't need a certain response, or I'm not actually your leader. I'm just in some kind of weird dance and partnership. I'm at my best when, you know, I'm going to lead you regardless of whether you respond in a way that's going to be constructive or not. You know, or I'm going to, you know, for my kids, like I'm going to give you what you need, whether you cooperate or not, or for my wife, like that. And it's and I'm finding, though, the only power that's strong enough in me to allow me to do that is that I'm having a constant flow of the grace of God in my life. Like it's a miracle that when you can actually, you have something to give that came from nothing. You know what I mean? Like, because otherwise you're in this kind of trading economy of, well, I'll give you this, but you better give me that. You know, like I'll give you a meal, but you better get your feet under you. Or I'll give you a bed, but you better get your crap together. Or I'll serve here, but otherwise you end in that same zone that you're talking about, where the person, they go for a while, maybe even a few years, and like, you know what, I'm done. These guys take, and I haven't gotten anything in return. Right? And it's like, yeah, because you need who you lead. You needed them to do a certain thing so that you could keep going. You know, and it's like, I find that keeps me having to come back to my own personal, you know, walk with Jesus, and like realizing I'm called to this. This isn't like, you know, there's no end game. There's no, the goal is faithfulness.
Yeah. We had in the early days, we had a few people say things like that, where you're just getting to know people, and they would say, you know, yeah, you guys will come in, do a few good deeds, feel good about yourself, and then you'll be gone. And I remember thinking that, because I thought, I'm coming in thinking, everybody would be so pleased at all the good stuff I'm doing. And that wasn't really necessarily the case. And, but it was an interesting thing to think about, because I thought, wow, okay, they must have seen that before. So, this long-term faithfulness, people knowing that you're here, we've developed friendships and relationships, you know, we're not going anywhere. Which isn't always, it's not easy really, but
some people that would come to our meals they don't go anywhere else. Like
That's
so
it.
It's like, in some ways it's a kind of not a miracle, but a wonderful thing in Christ that they showed up tonight.
Right.
Didn't talk to anybody, didn't have to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And so it'd be best if the volunteer didn't talk to them. We would just serve a hot meal, love them, and
that's a win.
That's a win.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And God sees what's going on there.
Totally.
You know? We don't know what happens when they go back to their apartment by themselves again, and realize that, wow, tonight I met the Lord.
And you don't know what's happening. I mean, we rarely get to hear stories like this, but we've heard a couple where and you just don't know what God takes or he does with something. And we were in Giant Tiger one time, picking up something for Outflow, and a gentleman came up to Jayme, and I hadn't seen him for a while. He had been at a couple of our early meals back in 2008 or 9, something like that. And I think Jayme must have shared a devotional or something. And this guy, he wasn't in St. John anymore. He was just visiting, but he was with his girlfriend. They were down in Halifax, and he's just came up in the aisle and was excited and said, "I just wanted to tell you that what you said, you know, changed my life.
Wow.
I got connected to Jesus, and I'm following him. I'm down in Nova Scotia now, and I'm, you know, doing." And you're thinking, oh, we'd have no idea that ever happened. Jayme had no idea
Right.
what it was that he said.
Yeah.
But
It's a neat exchange is how I'd say, because like I say, when somebody comes to a meal, they go back to their place and they're laying in bed.
Yeah.
They're thinking about the person that served them. Could be
Mm-hmm.
someone from your church volunteering that night that was just a lovely person to
Yeah.
deal with,
Mhm.
you know, not a grumpy
Totally.
guy that's with an agenda.
Yeah.
It was just somebody that was there with love. And for us going home, we've just met Christ through this broken individual. It's real.
Yeah.
That happens. And we're laying now in bed basking in
Yeah.
what that experience was
Yeah.
like. So it's this exchange with very little words and
Yeah.
but a lot of love, a lot of action. And
Yeah.
I think it's real. I mean,
Totally is.
I believe in that,
Yeah.
and we've experienced it for years now.
yeah.
If
And we don't have, like, you know, it's not, we have an underlying agenda. Like, I won't say that there's never anything. I mean,
Sure.
obviously there's always this passion to introduce people to Christ. That's what, I mean, that's, if we really believe that this is the ultimate for people's well-being, then
Yes.
I want people to follow Christ, put their trust in him, and be all in that way. And but that, again, it's not up to us. We get to play, hopefully, a part in it, but
Yeah.
it's not up to us. But yeah, that's there, but it's not always explicit in the sense that, like, you know, every meal, you don't get to eat until you hear me, you know,
Yeah.
give the you know, the 3-point sermon or something like that.
But we don't stop that either. If someone
Right.
comes into the dinners and they have a 3-point sermon, then preach it.
then
Yeah.
go for
you
it.
know?
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's all good too. And
Yeah.
sometimes people holler at them and stuff. But that's
Hey,
part of
man.
growing. We're all
Yeah,
going to grow
for
through
sure.
that.
For sure. I think in ministry, especially, if we live off of fruitfulness, like if we need that fruitfulness to keep motivating us, like we're destined for frustration and maybe burnout and failure. But I think if faithfulness is the goal, then we can't lose. Like, because you're just constantly, did I do what God called me to do today?
Mhm.
And if the answer is yes, then it doesn't really matter whether you sowed the seed or whether you picked the fruit or you watered it or whatever you were in that process. And that's that kind of long haul view. I think it's a real challenge. We live in a world that is really addicted to taking pictures of fruit, you
Mhm.
know, and saying, check that out. You know, it's a challenge. It's a challenge even in, you know, my job, you know, to grow, to help people grow in, again, wellness. It's a conversation about, like, life.
Yeah.
And it's, unfortunately, people want, whether we're dealing with people who are on the streets or joblessness or that kind of thing, or we're dealing with people who have huge houses and careers, and they're just as shriveled up in their soul as the person, you know, who slept at the shelter last night.
Mhm.
You know, the challenge is, one of the big fights of modern culture, I think, is like helping people understand there's no shortcuts to health.
Yeah.
Like, you can't take a pill. There's no fat pill yet. Like, I don't know if God's ever gonna, you know, at least with your soul. Like, there's no
Yeah.
quick fixes, man. It's like the long haul.
Can I share just in thinking about wellness, but also a story that was encouraging? This one happened last year, maybe. One of our guys that works for us, who's, you know, spent a lot of time in prison, he found Christ a few years ago, and he's just been an inspiration, really. But I remember at our training center looking down the hallway, and it was this moment where he was talking to one of the St. John police officers who also I don't think was always the easiest to deal with in the early days, but he also found Christ, and they bump into each other, and they knew each other from
Past.
some of their previous history, and looking down the hallway and seeing them, with big grins on their faces, kind of embracing and talking about Jesus. And you're seeing these two people from just totally opposite ends of life, and totally, and who I just thought, wow, this is it. Like, look at these two guys. Jesus is doing these amazing things in their life, and now they have this bond in Christ, and it was one of these moments that hits you as you look down, and you think, I'm seeing something pretty special right here. So
it's awesome.
Yeah.
Let me kind of bring it in for a landing here with like one more question on the church. What does good church partnership look like? Like, especially for we're not just talking about like how a church would partner with Outflow, but even as an individual, what does it look like to, get involved in a healthy way? What advice could you give to a Christian who, I think one of the things I've found out is there are a lot of people in the church who have the heart of Christ in them and a genuine desire to help, and they just don't know how. They just like, well, what can we do? They feel so far removed from, again, those relationships, and maybe that's the step, is figuring out how to build those relationships. But what advice do you give to the average? We're sitting in our Valley facility. We're out in the suburbs. We're a little bit removed from the streets of uptown St. John. And I think you think about a mom lives out here, soccer mom, minivan, running kids around. But she has a heart. She does have a heart for the poor. She does have a heart for the least of these. She doesn't turn a blind eye to when Jesus says, what you've done unto me, you've done for the least of these. I think a lot of people just don't know how to help. What does it look like when in a perfect world? What does it look like?
I mean, we've always talked about if you live out in the country and you don't know what to do for your neighbor or for somebody that's hurting or struggling, you hear a story. Put your phones down, get your pictures. It's not the time. Just give, figure out a way to do it that is not going to make the person feel weird, but you can just, so we're talking about people that love the Lord and the church, Christian people. They're living, no one's saying move into a poverty-stricken area. No one's saying sell your new sports car. No one's saying to do all these things. Just simply live with your eyes open, right, a little wider, a little more, and be really intentional about this scripture that says we're learning to do good, orphans, widows, the oppressed.
Yeah.
And that can come in different forms. And I think we'd probably be surprised if we started sharing stories. I know this anyways because I've met people that you think, well, they probably don't do much for somebody or whatever, but then it's like, wow, they really are doing some great work in their community, loving people, maybe visiting at the hospital, people that that are sick and they don't even know them, but they're going in there and handing out stuff to people, and just taking the day to day as it comes, and saying this is something that's happened. Talk to your kids about it, like, hey, you guys hear this happened, and what should we do? Let them tell you, and then go do it.
The assumption in that statement from Jesus where he says, whatever you've done unto the least of these, you've done unto me, the assumption is you're going to see people, you're going to have opportunity. I hear that you saying that is like, if you open your eyes up a little bit and you're just willing to say, Lord, how would you help me? How would you have me serve somebody you want me to notice today? Like, he's going to put those people in your path.
It's huge, even like if you have some tools or something like that, like, and that there's a guy that doesn't,
right?
And he's renting stuff or whatever. Well, just lend him your tools, and if he breaks them, well, big deal.
Yeah.
It's just a tool. You can get a new one and I'm not saying I live like that. I'm just saying that that's it. If you have that, then share it. And and see the people that are around you that don't, and that will go quite far in their life.
Yeah.
We've talked over the years about just engagement, and it's simple, but it is still the hardest thing. That moment of stepping out or doing something, as Jesus says, "You've done it to the least of these. You've done it to me." But you've got to do something, and I think that's also that act of faith where you've got to engage somebody. You could just walk by, or you could, but to start up with even a conversation and to get involved. It might be one of the most difficult moments in life, but I think that's where it begins. You've got to step out in faith.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see more of that.
I think you're right, Jayme, on I think there are people who do more than we realize too, right? Like, and that's one of the reasons, we'll end here because I want to give you guys a love week contribution.
Sweet.
But one of the reasons we started doing Love Week was just that, was like, I found out once I became the senior pastor here, is like, actually there are a ton of just great people who are constantly doing things to love and serve their neighbor just the way Jesus told them to do that. And one of the I think problems in the church is it's so uncoordinated, and it should be pretty organic. People should just be doing this stuff all the time. But I think there was a bad narrative, I guess, about, what does that church do, and we started doing Love Week partially was just to generate awareness within our own community of, no, you guys all know ways that you can love people and serve people and get out there, and let's just do it all together for a week, and just to show our, even ourselves, what we're capable of when we're intentional and we open our eyes a little bit, even just for 7 days. And that's not permission to close your eyes for the other 358 or whatever days of the year. It's more just, this is who we are all the time. Look what it looks like when we do it all at once, that kind of thing. And so,
and it just real quick is one of the things that we sometimes struggle with, is because when you're helping people, it's hard to receive help.
Right.
And that would be a little sermon that I'd encourage to be preached by pastors, is to say, let people help you, Don't be that way, because it's actually almost arrogant to think that you can help everyone, but when somebody turns to help you, you're like, no, I'm good. And that's not what we're talking about. You could be the richest guy in the neighborhood. That's fine. You bought it all and did it all, but don't forget, buddy he still wants to pitch in and help out somehow.
Yeah, you learn a lot about pride and humility when
it comes in different forms, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just
And it could go. We could help a lot more people if we were able to let ourselves be helped.
Yeah, for sure. I struggle with that. Like I had somebody do something for me a month or so ago, and they said, "No, we want you to just receive this," and I'm like, I have a hard time receiving, and they're like, "We know you do." And you need to grow up in that. You need to grow in that, and it says something about you. Like, you're too proud. Is it, And you're absolutely right. Well, you guys are such a blessing to the city of St. John, and I think you're the only organization we've done Love Week 8 years, and I'm pretty sure you guys are the only ones that we've hit every single year. But it's not just that I consider you guys friends. I legitimately am just super grateful for what you do, and if I could, the entrepreneur in me could do it. Like, there's a part of me that's like, I love what you've done so much. I wish I did it myself, that kind of thing. But, like I said, in recent years, the Lord has allowed, me to just take more of a view of, no, I put Jayme and Phil in St. John for a reason, and they have their own unique lane and call, and you're supposed to cheer them on and do what you can, whether that's blessing people at King's Church to constantly be involved, or, giving some financial help when we can. So, we love what you guys do. I know it's a massive organization, and, I wish we could give more, and you could feel it more, but we do hope this helps accomplish something, maybe buy a few meals or what have you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
On behalf of King's Church, that's for you guys.
Thank you.
So
And to King's Church, just to say, and to other churches, that you really, for the people at Outflow, they don't see it as us doing it. I know that now. It is the church. You did do it. We are doing it together, and that's the neat part is it's kind of when you get past that too, to say, no, we need to support the folks in St. John, and yes, Outflow is a way to go through to do that. But volunteers are showing up. We've employed people from your church that have been on fire here, wanting to do stuff, and so I look at it like that now. I might not have.
Me too.
In the beginning.
Yeah,
but,
me too.
But now I see this church.
Yeah.
Doing it.
Yeah.
And it's really a wonderful partnership.
Well, we need each other, and I think it's going to keep getting better and clearer. And who knows? I mean, talk about COVID 2020, and we didn't really get into the complexity of what that means, but I am crazy enough, and I know you guys are, to believe that God's going to use this to bring health, to us and through us. And I think he's forcing us to, like we'd mentioned earlier, like some of the tools have changed, and some of the stuff that we used to do and systems we'd built, don't work like they used to. And now we have to develop some new tactics and tools and ministries. And I think it's not bad. It's refining, and God's going to change us in a positive way. So who knows how God shapes us moving forward. And I definitely know that you guys aren't done, and the best is yet to come.
Awesome.
So I believe that.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah.
So hey, wait, one more thing. Well, how can people in the St. John area, where can they find you? How can they find out more about Outflow? How can they get involved?
Yeah, I would say the quickest is to go to outflowsj.com.
Yeah.
And or
the website.
Yeah, email info@outflowsj.com.
Yep.
And we'll get right back to you.
And so if someone wants to get involved, like, hey, I'd love to serve a meal or whatever, there's stuff that they can do right away.
Sort of, yeah.
Is that COVID's complicated things?
It has.
Yeah.
It has, yeah.
We have some volunteers that are helping, but we just can't have. We used to operate with over 100 a week in our meal program, so it shifted how we have to do things.
Yeah. And legitimately, and I think it's worth saying, like, sometimes people, if COVID's forced you to be able to have to shift, so you don't have as much volunteer opportunities. And I know it feels good to be, on the one hand, it's a mistake for Christians to just write checks and say, there, you do your job. We don't want to be part of this. On the other hand, I think it's also a mistake to say, no, I can best serve if I show up and I do it myself. No, maybe God gave you the gift of earning so that you can write checks and give that and support ministries. And I do feel like that's one of the things at King's Church is, like, I know we can do this.
Yeah.
So
and we still serve 600 suppers a week, but we have to buy a lot of stuff, so that will come in handy.
For sure. It's a massive I mean, you guys have a massive undertaking, and it takes money to do these things. So people can give. Can they give on the website?
Yeah.
Right at outflowsj.com.
Yeah.
So please donate. So awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Brent.
Good. Hey, thanks everybody. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jayme and Phil, and that it's inspired you to take seriously the needs around you and just do what you can to shine the light of Jesus in the world he's placed you in. Hey, if you haven't already, would love it if you'd subscribe, you'd share this episode for someone else to enjoy, maybe even leave a review. We'd sure be grateful. If not, we'll see you next time.